I've only got one child, which means I don't have to pick a favourite. Parents know what I mean. But I do have loads of Apple Silicon Macs, and I do need to pick a favourite. I've done it, and it's been the hardest thing ever. Look, I dare you to try this as well. If you've experienced more than one Apple Mac from the Apple Silicon generation, pick your favourite. Or if you just have an opinion on all of these different machines, just pick one that you take to a desert island. It's really difficult because most of them are fantastic. But I have done it. I've whittled down my top 5 Macs of the Apple Silicon generation, and I think you'll find the list rather interesting. Before I get stuck into that, although this video isn't sponsored, I do have some fantastic brand partners who help me make these free videos. One of those brand partners is RoboForm. And RoboForm is a password manager. It's not that sexy, you can't get excited about it, but it will change the way you use your Mac, and it's cross-platform. So if you have an Android device or a Windows machine, you can share all of your login details across all of your different devices. It's the best and the most affordable password manager I've found, and it's even more affordable if you click the link below, because you get 50% off RoboForm Premium for a limited time only. Go and check it out. Okay, let's get into my top 5 favourite Macs of the Apple Silicon generation. I'm quite nervous about this, I'm not sure why, but in 5th place, we have the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and more specifically the M1 Max version. Now this list wouldn't be complete without a MacBook Pro from the Apple Silicon generation because it fixed everything. If you lived through the era with the butterfly keyboard, the touch bar, or the lack of ports, the problems with power, it wasn't a good time. When Apple launched this MacBook Pro in 2021, it was almost like an apology because suddenly everything came back. It's got a proper keyboard, there's no touch bar, it got thicker, they reintroduced MagSafe, we got HDMI and an SD card slot. This is without a doubt the best MacBook Pro generation we've ever had. And if you add in the ProMotion display, the battery life, which is just incredible, it's so freeing in terms of taking this thing out without a charger. It's one hell of a package and it was worth waiting for. Now this is a spec'd up M1 Max version, and to be completely honest, it would do me for another 2 or 3 years. The only reason I'm replacing it is because I want a 14-inch MacBook Pro. I'm just a bit fed up with the size of this thing. That is a stupid reason to buy a new MacBook Pro. If you've got an M1 Max 16-inch or 14-inch MacBook Pro, you are in a very good place. And although this is going, I will be selling it if you're interested. I'm going to miss it. This has done so much for this business. In 4th place, we have the M2 Pro Mac Mini. Now, a little confession, this isn't an M2 Pro Mac Mini. It's actually a very old and broken Intel version. The M2 Pro Mac Mini I'm referring to is actually over there, plugged in, and I just can't be bothered to unplug it and put it over here. Regardless of that, fun fact, the Mac Mini is the only Apple Silicon Mac in this list that appears twice. So the reason the M2 Pro Mac Mini makes this list is because it is easily the best example of what this thing is capable of. Now the one that I have over there is the base model M2 Pro, so it has the 16 gig of unified memory and the 256 gig SSD. And trust me, you do not need any more than that. If you do need more than that, then I'd get yourself a Mac Studio. But for most people who want to do creative stuff in their business or at home, and they want lots and lots of power, plenty of headroom, but they don't want to spend an absolute fortune, the M2 Pro Mac Mini, the base model, is unbeatable. If you've got the budget to throw in a studio display, a lovely mechanical keyboard, and an MX Master 3 mouse from Logitech, you've got one hell of a setup. The stuff that computer can do is mind-blowing. I did a music production stress test on that thing in Logic Pro, and I could not make it sweat. In 3rd place, and this might surprise a few people, we have the M3 iMac. Another confession, this isn't an M3 iMac, this is the M1 version, but they look identical. And I have had my hands on the base model M3 iMac, which some of you may have seen the video about and commented on. a lot of people have. I went to Apple about a month ago and saw the spec'd up, the fully decked out M3 iMac in action, and it was amazing. And that's the one that makes third place in this list. It's the 24 gig version of the M3 iMac, because I think that demonstrates exactly what this new design, well, nearly new design, is capable of. Even taking into account that new MacBook Pro design that I talked about earlier, I think the iMac refresh in, was it 2021? I think it was 2021. I think that represents one of the biggest changes Apple has made to a Mac in recent years. Now, don't get me wrong, the M1 version, this one, is a fantastic Mac, but it doesn't make this list because, firstly, most of the Macs in this list are M1 chip Macs, and also because, well, I think the M3, that M3 chip with the 24 gig of unified memory, unlocks the true potential of this new design. And that is incredibly exciting if you want a super powered all-in-one Mac with a beautiful screen and this lovely thin design and some very funky colors. And also, it gives me hope for a big version of this. The good news is Apple is sending me a 24 gig M3 iMac to test, which I'll be doing first thing in January. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell not to miss that video. We're getting close now. So in second place, we have, again, the Mac Mini, and more specifically the M1 16 gig Mac Mini. Now, I definitely can't show you that exact unit because it's living a new life in America. That's right, I gave away my M1 Mac Mini as a competition. I don't regret it because it's going to a much better home. It wasn't being used here, but I do miss it. And the reason I miss it is because I built this business on it. I edited the first 80-ish videos for this channel on that Mac Mini, and I could not make that thing sweat. It wouldn't beach ball, it never crashed, it didn't get warm, the fans never came on. I did spec mine up to 16 gig of unified memory, but it still only cost just over £1,000. And it was replacing a 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro, which cost about 3 times as much. And there was no perceivable difference in performance, and that 16-inch MacBook Pro sounded like an aircraft taking off. That the fans on that thing were going constantly. So to go from that to something that cost a third of the price and did the exact same job completely sums up Apple Silicon. If you're still using an M1 Mac Mini, 1, I'm very jealous, and 2, once again, you're in a very good place. In first place, my favourite Mac of the Apple Silicon generation so far is the M1 MacBook Air. And once again, the base model. When I said I built this channel on the M1 Mac Mini, that was from a production perspective. Everything else, all of the admin, the writing, the everyday tasks, which, let's be honest, is what makes up most of this business, was done on this. And just like that Mac Mini, it performed well above its pay grade. It never crashed, it never got warm, there's no fans to come on, but it never felt like I was pushing it too far. It always felt like it had so much headroom. I even did 4K video editing on this when I was in a pinch. If I was out on the road and I only had this with me, it did the job on multiple occasions. This will stay in my family and in the business forever. And to prove that point, it's now being used by my girlfriend who is doing a degree with this. She's not techie at all. She doesn't care about tech, but she's fallen in love with this. Yes, even with these stickers on it. And once again, this is the base model. It's got 8 gig of unified memory, which shouldn't work. It's got that 256 gig SSD, which I've never filled up. And yes, it has that wedge design, which is quite old these days, but I know lots of people who prefer this. And I think this laptop completely defines Apple Silicon. It's the reason the M1 chip sent shockwaves through the industry. If you can have a laptop of this size, this tiny little frame with no active cooling, doing incredible things which once again are way above its pay grade, I just don't know what to say. This laptop completely changed the game for me. And I just don't think we're going to see another Apple Silicon Mac that makes the same leap that this one did from the Intel version. That's quite sad really, but it does mean that the M1 MacBook Air is, in my opinion, the best Apple Silicon Mac Apple has ever made and will ever make. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 Macs of the Apple Silicon generation, but it's over to you. What are yours? Let me know down below.